All right, come on back. This morning, we have Freebo back with us for our music. And I want to tell you a little bit about him before we sing this first song. And then I want to say something about the song. And then I'll have you stand up. So you can sit down for the moment now if you like. So Freebo has been around for a long time. He's a genuine folk rock blues icon. 40 years of recording and touring with Bonnie Raitt, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Maria Muldaur, John Mayall, Ringo Starr, and so on and so on. And he got into New Thought a number of years ago and shifted what he was writing, but kept all of that background in the music that he does. He's a multi-award winner, finalist in numerous songwriting contests. He's been on Saturday Night Live, The Muppet Show, The Midnight Special, and Walt Falconer, who wrote a thing for a cool album of the day, said listening to Freebo is like riding on a cumulus cloud of peaceful awareness, a cosmic blend of folk, country, blues, rock, soul, ear-pleasing, genre-defying music. So this particular song that he's got for the opening for us today, he will say in his introduction, the only part that you need to sing is the do-re-mi part. That's not true because the lyrics are going to be on the screen and the melody's pretty simple. So you're going to figure it out right away. And so what I'm going to do, this is called We Are All One People, and he's going to give you an introduction to it. But I'd like you to stand and get ready right now for this as he explains what we're doing.
It's great to be here, and I'd like to do a song that I wrote some years ago in Vietnam for the Vietnamese orphans and street kids that I had a chance to teach music to. So I wrote this song to see if I could make that work for them, and it really related to them. And it's a simple little part for you. It's a do-re-mi part, and that's with the same melody of the first two verses, which I think you'll get. So I hope you enjoy this. The song is called We Are All One People.
You'll catch on real fast.
You and I are both the same. We are all one people. Open hearts and open minds. We want to be peaceful. We all live in one big world. All the boys and all the girls. You and I are both the same. We are all one people.
That's the melody.
I am you and you are me. We are all each other. All the young and all the old. You are all my brother. We all live in one big land. We all play in one big band. All the children holding hands. We are all one people.
Back to the first verse.
You and I are both the same. We are all one people. Open hearts and open minds. We want to be peaceful. We all live in one big world. All the boys and all the girls. You and I are both the same. We are all one people. We are all one people. We are all one people.
You may be seated. You can clap. Yeah. And I would like to let you know that you don't have to be so shy. You sound really good. So once you think you have the drift, sing out, Louise. It's a good thing. Just put it out there. All right, so now we're going to begin to turn within. And so I invite you to silence your cell phones so they won't interrupt us. You at home, it's up to you because we won't know. But for all of us here, we don't want to interrupt the service, so please silence your cell phone and let this lovely song, which is kind of a love song, I'm thinking of it as a love song to God, take us into our center right now. And Judith will lead us in the opening prayer in just a few moments.
It's a whisper you hear in the midst of your fear. It's revealing. It's a part of the heart, and it's just who we are. It's so healing. It's a power inside, always wins over pride, never judges, and strengthens and comforts us all. That's what love is. It's a healer of souls, makes the broken ones whole and completed. It's what gives you the strength and the hope when you're feeling defeated. It's a compass and guide, and it won't be denied, so we trust it. It's a light in the dark of it all. That's what love is. And it's patient and kind, and it's deaf, dumb, and blind to the madness. It's the ace of the dealer of truth. It's the healer of sadness. It's a place that you know from so long, long ago, and it's free. And you feel when it's there, 'cause you're able to share from your being. And it takes us all higher, and it lifts and inspires all it touches. It's the best part of being alive. That's what love is. And it's patient and kind, and it's deaf, dumb, and blind to the madness. It's the ace of the dealer of truth. It's the healer of sadness. It's beyond right or wrong, and it's not weak or strong. It's not winning. For the young and the old, it's a brave and a bold new beginning. It's the peace and the hope. It's what helps us to cope. It's forgiveness. It's a light that will always endure. It's eternal and simple and pure. That's what love is. Thank you.
As we gather, merry meet, we are here to remember that the sacred and the sacredness is in all things. That there is one power, one presence, one light that shines through all living beings. That it is in the ground beneath us and the stars above us. This sacredness is within and without. It is a circle in the east and the west and the north and the south. It is the above, it is the below, it is the groundedness we live in. And so when I stand in this presence of this sacredness, and I remember the truth of my being, that I am connected to each and every individual in this room, that there is one mind, it is the divine mind, it is my mind, it is the mind of every living being, then I can remember that all there is to do is to sink in and listen and love. And so it's from this place of sacredness within and without that I claim for this merry meeting together today, that whatever is heavy on anyone's heart, whether that is a need for healing in the physical or healing in relationships, or healing of financial matters, or knowledge of the next direction, that each and every person in this room be filled by this time together, remembering that the truth and the direction forward is in each individual's center. And so I just give great thanks for the music that surrounds this room, that uplifts and fills. I give thanks for all the hands that worked to put together this day, moving chairs, making coffee. For this is community, and this is who we are. One community, one mind, living in love together in the sacredness of life. And so I give thanks for our beloved leader, Reverend Mary, knowing that the words that come through her because they are from the divine, spoken to each and individual heart in this room and on this recording and in the Ethernet of the internet. So here we come to gather, to be together, and remember the sacredness of life. And I give thanks for this time, and I let it be. And so it is. Blessed be.
And so it is. Thank you, Judith.
This song is called She's My Personal GPS. Goes like this. Let me tell you about my angel, one you never see. My everyday companion, living deep inside of me. She guides me through the trenches. She gets me out of every mess. She's my Bible, she's my buddy, she's my personal GPS. And she leads me on the journey. She leads me to the goal. She's always on the money, never leaves me in the cold. And every time I listen, I wind up being truly blessed. She's my Bible, she's my buddy, she's my personal GPS. Yes, she is. I'm at the fork in the road, I gotta make a choice. So much going on, I don't heed her voice. So I'll make a wrong turn, I'm feeling lost and afraid. Then I hear my angel calling, recalculate. Well, I gotta pay attention, it's powerful stuff. I gotta turn it on, and I gotta turn it up. Cause every time I do it, you know I'm guaranteed success. She's my Bible, she's my buddy, she's my personal GPS. Yeah, she is. Play it, boy. Well, I'm floating lost and lonely, drifting in the dark. Will I ever find a harbor? I don't see it on the chart. Was something saying no? Someone else is whispering yes, yes, yes. She ain't my Bible, she's my buddy, she's my personal GPS. Yeah, she is. She ain't my Bible, she's my buddy, crystal clear and never muddy. She's my Watson, she's my Tonto, never tardy, always prompt. She's my Sherpa, she's my guide, never runs, never hides. Truly awesome, she's the best. She's my personal GPS. Personal GPS. She's my personal GPS. I say she's my personal GPS. Yes, yes.
And so when we look at the tradition of paganism, we're talking about people who worship the earth and everything in it, recognizing it as the personal guidance system, that connection to that. So as we're talking about living from the heart of wonder, each one of these world faiths that we're looking at has its own lens that it looks at the universe through in order to grasp that wonder and emphasize it in a particular way. So today, we're talking about paganism. It seemed really appropriate on May Day, on Beltane, that we would talk about paganism today. And so here we have Stonehenge, which is thousands of years old. The first time I saw Stonehenge was in 1973, and you could walk right up to the stones. Consequently, they were covered with graffiti. The next time I was there, it was fenced off. All of the stones had been cleaned, but you couldn't get near them. Now I guess you can get up to them again. So there's something energetically mystical about standing in that place and finding yourself there. Sometimes we find ourselves someplace new and we're not quite up to speed with it yet. Anybody relate to that? I remember when I went from 8th grade into high school, because I was in Catholic school, we went up to 8th grade, and then went to high school, not the whole of my freshman year, but for a good part of it, I wished I could go back to 8th grade. It was just kind of overwhelming to be in high school. Anybody have that experience? So this is about shifting place. Scal said, I had just moved from an apartment to a house in the same small town, and one day at the grocery store, I used the last of my personalized checks bearing my old address, and the cashier examined the document and asked if everything was correct, and I assured her that it was, and then she started to put the check in the cash drawer, but she stopped again and inquired if everything was accurate. Why do you ask? I responded. Because, she replied, my husband and I moved into this apartment yesterday, and I don't remember seeing you at breakfast. Sometimes when we relocate in consciousness, it takes us a while to get oriented. And so we're orienting ourselves today to some place that we've been before in our ancient history, in our lineage, in our past lives, if you believe in past lives, places where we have been in earth-honoring communities before that we're returning to this morning. So first, the science of mind. In our teaching, we look at the infinite as a divine presence, but also a mystery, not a person, but an intelligence, an energy, a creative presence that is not male or female, but is masculine and feminine, both. That it's everywhere, always, all the time, forever. There's no getting into it or getting out of it. It's always completely present and available to us and operating through creative law. Well, when we look at the heart of paganism, what we see is that the first thing is the love and kinship with nature, the worship of all of nature, the celebration of all the movement and changes that take place in nature. Ernest Holmes said, in the science of mind, spiritual wisdom says that God manifests through everything and is incarnated in all, that all is divinity and nature herself is the body of God. And from a blog called I Am a Pagan, it says, I am a pagan. I acknowledge that the divine is everywhere in the energy of life. The physical and spiritual are deeply intertwined, not separate in this world. So that's the first piece, the love and kinship with all of sacred nature. The second thing in the Wiccan tradition, which is one of the earthbound traditions, is what's called the Wiccan Rede, which is a pagan ethic. It's not a huge thing, but it outlines relationships and behaviors. And it says, the heart of it is, and ye harm none, do what you will. So if you are not causing anyone else harm, then go ahead and do whatever it is that you want to do. Ernest Holmes, our founder for Centers for Spiritual Living, wrote this in The Science of Mind. The criterion for anyone as to what is right or wrong is not to be found in some other person's judgment. The criterion is, does the thing I wish to do express more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harm no one? If it does, it is right. It is not selfish. But if it is done at the expense of anyone, then in such degree we are making a wrong use of the law. And in the Wiccan tradition, it also says to be aware of the law of three. The belief is that whatever you put out, we believe too that whatever you put out returns to you, but they believe that whatever you put out returns to you 3 times. So you really want to make sure you don't screw it up, because you wouldn't want 3 times as much stuff coming back to you that was negative. So that's also a part of the warning and the law in that tradition. And the third part of it that is so important is the recognition of the divine as both masculine and feminine, which we also believe in Science of Mind. Our founder says, spirit is the Father, Mother, God, because it is a principle of unity back of all things. The masculine and feminine principles both come from the one. And in the Pagan Core Beliefs article, Ocean says, divine oneness is expressed in the divine feminine and masculine, which engage in an eternal cosmic dance of creation. So when we're looking at the pagan tradition, what we're looking at is the process of being connected to and aware of the earth and the cycles and the seasons and the changes and the weather and the directions, and being aware of all of that not only around us but also within us. So Native American traditions, which I talked about last week, do have an element of this that's related, where they recognize what's before, behind, on both sides, above, below, and within. And in the pagan tradition, the symbols and rituals that take place are engaged always with the directions and the seasons. So you find the pentacle often represents paganism. If it's upside down, that's Satanism. That's a whole different thing. We're not going there. But the pentacle represents the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and spirit. And the circle that the pentacle is inside represents eternity. So this is the elements and spirit, and that symbol is the recognition and the reminder of those values. Then we have the sacred spiral. The sacred spiral is ancient, ancient, ancient. It shows up in every indigenous pagan tradition throughout the world. Some of the oldest versions of the spiral appear at Newgrange in Ireland on the tomb, on the outside. And they have been there literally for thousands of years. So the symbolism is powerful for this. It is interesting in that the spiral moves in both directions. So it moves down and in. It also moves up and out. So I think of this when we're walking the labyrinth, the sacred labyrinth. And the labyrinth that we're familiar with that comes from the floor of the cathedral in France is related to labyrinths that went back far, far in the past before that. Labyrinths that recognize the power of going within and tuning in to achieve or gather wisdom, and then bringing it back out into the world for your own life and for the community both. So the sacred spiral and the phases of the moon as it waxes and wanes, and the new moon when it hides out, and the full moon when it's there in all its glory, is related to the feminine cycles of life and of female creatures on the planet. And then we have the Earth Mother, the sacred goddess, who represents the fertility of the earth and bringing forth of new life. And so in this particular image of her, the spiral is at the womb level because that's where the creative energy is symbolized as residing in that place. So we see that everything that one does physically in the world can become a ritual within the individual's life or the family's life, and then the seasonal rituals become part of the entire community. So there are rituals for eating, for lovemaking, for planting, for harvesting, and for tending to the seasons and the children and the 8 holy days, the equinoxes and solstices, and the quarter holidays. That would be Beltane in May, Lunasa in August, Samhain at Halloween, and Imbolc in the early spring, right after the first of the year, like in February. In the symbols of the earth tradition, there's the recognition of the sacredness of the earth, but also the participation of the sun and the moon and the stars and the movement of the constellations throughout the year. So pagan people were very aware of all of this, and it was extremely important because as they raised their crops, as they took care of their cattle, all of those changes in the cycles and seasons were important to the well-being of their livelihood, of their ability to eat and to celebrate and to share and to live well. So, before we understood scientifically more about how the body works and how weather works and all that sort of thing, they learned through observation what they could understand, and they made natural assumptions based on what they saw. So, for example, if all of the cows tended to gather in a particular place, and then the people noticed that when the cows did that, soon after that it would rain, then if they needed rain, the logical thing to try was to herd all the cows over there to see if that would bring on the rain. It was not an accurate representation of how it worked, but it was a reasonable assumption to try. I mean, I would try it if I didn't know anything else. Why not? Couldn't hurt. Get the cows over there, and some of the time, I'm sure it did rain. And as we know, intermittent reinforcement is stronger than, constant reinforcement. So they acted upon what was most logical, what was most familiar. We see little kids do this all the time. They draw logical conclusions that then turn out to be not accurate, but they were logical. There is then not an understanding in the pagan times of the male's role in reproduction. Because after all, there was quite a length of time, maybe between that interaction and the birth of a child. So there were mysteries connected with the female of the species, whatever species it was, because they, like the earth, could bring forth new life. And that was a mystery, how and when that would happen and why. Why some women brought forth young and others didn't. Those were mysteries. Also, there was the powerful recognition that blood equaled life. That if you lost too much blood, that was it. It was over. And yet, they also knew that the women could bleed every month and not suffer injury. That they could bleed a lot, giving birth, and not die. So the blood mysteries were also considered very sacred and very important to the well-being of the earth and the people. So there was a certain respect and awe, actually, to this whole reproductive process that was centered in the women. And I think that partly what we've guessed as a logical conclusion, whether it's accurate or not, I don't know if we can even find out, but the recognition that that whole process for females was like a natural initiation into womanhood. There was nothing else needed because the body and the cycles were taking on that process all on their own. But for the young men, then, they created initiation rituals for them into manhood. And in some of those traditions, it involved circumcision. And so the boys would stay with their mothers until they were 7 years old, and then they would be kidnapped by the men. There would be a whole, and this was a ritual that everybody knew about. The women knew about it, the men knew about it. The kids did not necessarily know what was coming. And so the men would rush in one particular day, and the women would try and fight them off, and there would be this whole big thing. And they would take the little boys, and they would go. And then the women would sit down and, have coffee and say, do you think I put up enough of a fuss? That kind of thing. So the boys would go off with the men. They would learn the ways of manhood. And then at a certain point, when they were, 13 or so, they were taken into this place and, kept overnight in a place where they were enclosed and they were scared. And then they went through this whole circumcision process, which was no fun at 13. And then they were men. There was a change that happened, and then they were men. Why circumcision? I have no clue. But that's one of the traditions that came up among pagans. Now we know not everybody was circumcised back in those days. The Jewish kids were, the boys, but it was part of the ancient pagan traditions in some countries that went on. So when we look at the two side by side, we see this impression that life is good. This is something we teach in Science of Mind that comes right out of a pagan tradition, that life is good, that all of it is sacred, that it is up to us to find our way in that and to live in accordance with it, that what we put out will return to us. It does come back. There is a law of return. Whether it's 3 times or once, I don't know. And so the question we might ask ourselves, if we're looking to live with these values from the pagan tradition, might be, in what ways can I best celebrate life? In what ways can I best celebrate life? So here we are, at Beltane, which was a huge celebration. It was a celebration of the turning of the seasons, the taking the cattle out into the fields, and then cleansing the house, taking the torch of fire around the house, driving the cattle through the 2 fires, in some cases making them leap over the fire, which the people also did. They walked through, they leapt over the fire. So you hear about that at Beltane, people jumping the fire. And there was a sharing and a kindness and a cooperation and participation in the life of the community together, and the recognition of how they were bound to the land, and the land, they were of the land. They were not there to dominate the land or to subdue the land. They were there to cooperate with the land and with that life, to notice what was needed and to care for each other. And so I want to wrap up with this story today because I think this is so sweet and touching. It's not about pagans per se. During the waning years of the Depression, in our small southeastern Idaho community, I used to stop by Mr. Miller's roadside stand for farm fresh produce as the season made it available. Food and money were still extremely scarce, and bartering was used extensively. One day, Mr. Miller was bagging some early potatoes for me when I noticed a small boy, delicate of bone and feature, ragged but clean, hungrily eyeing a basket of freshly picked green peas. I paid for my potatoes, but I was also drawn to the display of fresh peas. I'm a pushover for creamed peas and new potatoes. Pondering the peas, I couldn't help but overhearing a conversation between Mr. Miller and the ragged boy next to me. "Hello, Barry. How are you today?" "Hello, Mr. Miller. Fine, thank you. Just admiring them peas. Sure look good." "They are good, Barry. How's your ma?" "Fine. Getting stronger all the time." "Good. Anything I can help you with?" "No, sir. Just admiring them peas." Don't mind me, it's my frog. Turn me off. There. All right. "No, sir, just admiring them peas." "Would you like to take some home?" "No, sir. Got nothing to pay for them with." "Well, what have you got to trade me for some peas?" "All I got's my prize marble here." "That right? Let me see it." "Here 'tis. She's a dandy." I can see that. Only thing is, this one is blue, and I sort of go for red. Have a red one like this at home?" "Not exactly, almost." "Well, tell you what. Take this sack of peas home with you. Next trip this way, let me look at that red marble." "Sure will. Thanks, Mr. Miller." Mrs. Miller, who'd been standing nearby, came over to help me. With a smile, she said, "There are 2 other boys just like him in our community. All 3 are in very poor circumstances. Jim just loves to bargain with them for peas, apples, tomatoes, whatever. When they come back with their red marbles, and they always do, he decides he doesn't like red after all. And he sends them home with a bag of produce for a green marble, or an orange one maybe." I left the stand smiling to myself, impressed with this man. Short time later, I moved to Colorado. But I never forgot the story of Mr. Miller, the boys, and the bartering. Several years went by, each one more rapidly than the last. Then recently I had occasion to visit some old friends in that same Idaho community. And while I was there, I learned that Mr. Miller had recently died. They were having his viewing that evening. Darn. While I was there, I learned that Mr. Miller had recently died. They were having his viewing that evening, and knowing my friends wanted to go, I agreed to accompany them. Upon our arrival at the mortuary, we fell into line to meet the relatives of the deceased and to offer whatever words of comfort we could. Ahead of us in line were 3 young men. One was in an army uniform, and the other 2 wore nice haircuts, dark suits, white shirts, very professional looking. They approached Mrs. Miller, standing smiling and composed at her husband's casket. Each of the young men hugged her, kissed her. on one cheek and spoke briefly with her, and then moved on to the casket. Her misty light blue eyes followed them. As one by one, each young man stopped briefly, placed his own warm hand over the cold, pale hand in the casket, and each left the mortuary wiping his eyes. Our turn came to meet Mrs. Miller. I told her who I was and mentioned the story she'd told me about the marbles. Eyes glistening, she took my hand and led me to the casket. Those 3 young men who just left were the boys I told you about. They told me how much they appreciated the things Jim traded them. Now at last, when Jim could not change his mind about the color or the size, they came to pay their debt. We've never had a great deal of wealth in this world, she confided, but right now, Jim would consider himself the richest man in Idaho. With loving gentleness, she lifted the lifeless fingers of her deceased husband, and resting underneath were 3 exquisitely shiny red marbles. There is something to the caring for one another that is built into a community that relies upon the earth and the seasons and the cycles and each other for the well-being of the whole community, for their survival, for their life. We rely on each other as much today, but we don't realize it because so much of it is delivered someplace by somebody else, or harvested by somebody else, or grown by somebody else, or made by somebody else. And all we have to do is pay for it and wait for the delivery, or take it home with us ourselves. And when you need to depend upon somebody for a barn raising, you really know who your neighbors are and who can be counted on and who can be trusted and who you can ask for things. But in our society, that's more difficult. We get more isolated from each other. Amanda and I bought a cedar chest yesterday up in Santa Rosa, or was it yesterday or the day before? The day before, I guess. And it's a cedar chest, it's made of wood with brass fittings. We could not lift it, let alone, would it fit in my car? Now the challenge is, how do we get it from the consignment place in Santa Rosa to our house in Petaluma? There was a day when the neighborhood would get together, we'd take a truck out there, we'd all get in and load it up, and we'd bring it out to the house and we'd have a party, right? But that's not true anymore. So there are other ways and means that we have to engage to do something like that now. So when we come into this place where we're honoring Beltane and May Day and the celebration of spring, let's also take a moment to celebrate the natural connections that are available to us in our neighborhood, in our community, with people that live around us, the relationships we have with our own bodies, with our own history. And maybe we can take a little time to notice where the Big Dipper is. That's not something people 3,000 years ago would have had to wonder about. They would have known exactly where it was, no matter what time of day or night it was. Me, right now, I have no idea where it is. I would really have to go and look for it to be sure it was still there, So let's join in prayer as we turn within and bless these sacred traditions, the cycles of life. I know right now there's only one presence, one power, one being, one intelligence, one life. It flows through everything in wonder, in magical amazement at the return of life and the removal of life energy during the winter into dormancy. The flow of those cycles that is not limited into 4 seasons, but is continuously happening, continuously changing. This same process is going on in me, in all of us. Moment by moment, there is change, there is evolution, there is activity, and it is connected to the rhythms and cycles of each other, of the earth, of the sky. I take this moment to call forth awareness and awe and appreciation and celebration of this glorious gift of life, of the beauty of it, of the mystery and the power. We carry with us today a deep respect for all of this that has brought us here, and claim a greater awareness and gratitude for all of that, active in every aspect of our lives right now. Knowing this, we claim the great good that we go forth into today as we step into the month of May, with gratitude for the beauty everywhere around us in this beautiful part of the world, and for all the life taking place within and around us. This is a reflection of who we are, and we hold it in awe and gratitude. I let this word go with joy, with awe, with gratitude, with deep appreciation, and simply let it be to do what it does so beautifully. I claim this for all of us right here, right now, throughout this day, throughout this week. With gratitude, we say together, and so it is. Please stand and join me for the affirmation for the day. Thank you. Whoever just cleared their throat, that was for me. So join me as we say, I celebrate my life today and every blessing in it. This is a day to relax, play, and give love. There's beauty all around me, and my soul is enriched by it. And so it is. You may sit down. This morning, I'm going to make a request of all of our practitioners. Now, you know that in the last number of weeks, I get this tickle thing that happens during the service. I don't mind doing that at other times during the day if it happens, but I would like to not do that in the service anymore. So if it's possible, and we know anything is possible, please treat for an unticklish throat throughout Sunday morning from beginning to end for me. I would be so grateful for that. All right, on into the sacred giving. Now, one of the things that happens with our seasons as we watch is there is an abundance of sacred giving that takes place constantly and continuously. So yesterday we walked by a bunch of olive trees on our walk, and they're covered with little tiny buds or flowers or something, little teeny things. And I said to Amanda, do you suppose every one of those turns into an olive or potentially could turn into an olive? It's like, if that's true, the tree would fall over, I would think. There would be so many olives. Not only is it given, it's given abundantly. It's given enormously. So we're also called upon as part of the infinite to give and to receive. So this is a giving time for those of us that are here present with our gifts this morning. I have Reverend Lloyd's check because he gave it to me before he left for this month. So I'd like to call the ushers to come forward now to prepare to receive the offering. If you'd like to text your gift today, you can do that. Use the number that's up on the screen to text your donation. We are giving with an appreciation for now everything any of us has given throughout the week this week and all that Golden Gate has received, including answered prayer. So if you have received answered prayer this week, or if you were a manifestation of answered prayer for somebody else, and who knows, you may be even without knowing it, let's bless all the gifts right now. So hold your gift near your heart if you're giving it yourself, or in your hands together if you're giving it for a loved one. And let's go into our offering blessing together right now. So we say, this gift I give is God in action. I now send it forth to bless and to prosper. I know that everywhere it goes, it is creating a world living in love, one heart and one thought at a time. And so it is.
The song is called Standing Ovation. life is a comedy. The part that we play is never as clear as it could be. Or maybe a drama, who is to say? But it always turns out as it should be. And if I am a player who's played his part well and did it with humor and grace, when I die, give me a standing ovation, a celebration for a job well done. No need to cry, it's not my final destination. I'll be at the station when the train comes by. Ooh, you write your own story as the pages unfold, but you're never quite sure of the ending. Maybe it's destiny, maybe it's choice, maybe we're all just pretending. In a tale of a lifetime, if it all comes around and you only receive what you're sending, when I die, give me a standing ovation, a celebration for a job well done. No need to cry, it's not my final destination. I'll be at the station when the train comes by. Some have it easy, some have it all. Some work so hard for so little. We sink to the bottom and we rise to the top, but mostly wind up in the middle. The more we are different, the more we're the same. I'm just one more who's worked through the riddle. And when I die, give me a standing ovation, a celebration for a job well done. No need to cry, it's not my final destination. I'll be at the station when the train comes by. When I die, give me a standing ovation, a celebration for a job well done. No need to cry, it's not my final destination. I'll be at the station when the train comes by. Oh, yes, I will. Oh, yes, I will. Thank you.
So all of us together, on behalf of Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living, do gratefully accept this offering. And we send it out into the world with the intention that it creates connection and blessing and awareness of one another everywhere that it goes. And so it is. All right, so if you happen to be with us for the first time this morning, we're so delighted that you could be here, and we encourage you, and if you were here, on Easter or last week and we were rushing around to set things up afterwards for food, you may not have had a chance to do this. So even if this isn't your first Sunday, if it's your second or third, Pick up a welcome packet at the back. That'll give you more information about us and a Science of Mind magazine. Take out this little blue card that says welcome on it, fill it out and turn it in back there, and we'll give you a little book that is a book of affirmations you can take away with you as our gift, and thank you for being here today. We'd love to see you here often with us in the future. Everybody that participated this morning to create this wonderful morning for us, I want to especially acknowledge them all, and also all those of you that helped with setup and takedown for Easter, and all those of you that helped with setup and takedown last week for the memorial recognition that we did for Ron Ruda here following the service. So let's give everybody a hand that was involved in any of that. We have a couple of spring hikes coming up. You can talk to Steve over here if you have questions about that. He'd be happy to answer any questions for you. Two of them coming up, one May 5th, which is this coming Thursday. That's a beach walk. And you're going to meet at Tennessee Valley Trailhead at 9:45. We do want you to RSVP to Steve Einhaus or Deb Irwin, one or the other, so they can give you more information, and also so they know to wait for you if you're intending to come and you might be running a little late. The next one will be the Return to Ring Mountain on May 19th, and that's going to meet at the end of Endeavor Street, which is a little different than the last time they went there. So make note of that. On that walk, you're going to see the Tiburon Mariposa lily, which does not grow anywhere else in the world but in Tiburon. So that's a great one. So do talk to Steve this morning if you want to. He's a lovely bearded man in the lavender shirt, and he will tell you more about that. Also, the climate tip of the week this week is, do you know you don't always have to buy new clothes? You can find wonderful stuff at bargain prices in all sorts of consignment and secondhand places where you can find gently used clothing. So we encourage you to consider that as an option if you're out shopping for something to wear. Now, would you bring me the prayer box, and all of the practitioners please surround the room. I encourage you to get prayer. If you're feeling disconnected from people around you, particularly today, this is a great day to have a prayer of celebration and connection with our practitioners who are on duty at the table. So go over to the table after the service, and they will be happy to move you to a private spot and do a prayer for you this morning. And you can also place it in the prayer box, and that will be prayed over during the whole week. So let's take a moment to turn within one more time. Take a breath. In the vast love of the divine presence, which is all around us and within us, we gratefully step into this beautiful day and allow the seasons to speak to us, the earth to wake us up, and our dear ones around us to light our hearts and minds with even greater love. We open our hearts to all the love that wants to come in today with such gratitude. And we send forth love everywhere we have an opportunity to do so today, so that we can be a light to others in the world. We're grateful for this opportunity and for this gift. And so we send this prayer into the law to carry it out in us and through us and for us. And so it is. Please stand and join us for the benediction and the closing song this morning. And I just want to tell you the closing song is called If Not Now, When? And once again, the words will be on the screen, so you'll be able to join together in that. But for now, let's say the benediction together. I now walk so that whoever walks beside me dwells in the presence of God. And whoever places a hand in mine is lifted. And whoever thinks of me is illumined with God consciousness. For spirit and all people and I are one eternally. And so it is.
I'd like to do an inspirational song for all of you. This is for all those things that we meant to do, we mean to do, and we haven't quite gotten together yet. But you say, one of these days I'm going to do it. You know, you might figure it out. This song is called If Not Now, When? When I was young, I had these dreams. Time didn't matter, or so it seemed. Now I'm still dreaming. What back then? The time keeps streaming. It's not now when hundreds of heartaches and broken down plans. So many what and what if I change? My fear held me captive. Patient again. It's time to break free, boy. If not now, when? If not now, when? It's not me who I can't pretend. But I know it's true. I make this vow. I swear amen. My time is now. It's not now. Doubting and blaming. It's time I let them go. 'Cause you see me journey. It can go so slow. But I hear these voices again and again. They keep on calling. It's not now when. It's not now when.